What brand are you using? What's your
Zyn.
Is it Zyn? Okay.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah.
All right. So you're an upper lip.
That's what it says to do. So that's literally what Zyn says to do on the cartridge, is to do upper lip. I did it in bottom lip a couple of times, and I don't know if it had any correlation, but like when I was flossing the next morning, I had a little bit of blood on the floss, and I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I should probably just do what it says on the top. So but I do go back and forth. I make sure I consciously like, oh, when was the last time I had a Zyn? Oh, it was on my right side. All right, now I'm going to make sure I put it on
Okay,
my
yeah.
right
So
side.
you're trying to space out the nicotine burn on your gums.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, you gotta. I mean, you know, hey.
I try. Well,
trying to be healthier.
I do them on flights, right? Especially like long flights, and I tend to. I'll try to park them on both sides throughout the course of the flight. You know, like move it around. Our security guy will do like a Zyn on the bottom and then a dip on the top up here at the same time. So
that is brutal.
Yeah.
By the way, we're already recording. Everyone, welcome to Drinks with Johnny. I'm here with my good friend Andy Biersack again, here to talk about some new stuff been going on. But I'm so happy we're starting with nicotine. You know, I didn't expect it to go that way. I just got into these Zyns like about a year ago. I haven't smoked since, so I feel good about that. And according to what they tell me, nicotine by itself is kind of just like caffeine. So yes, it's addicting, but it's not going to cause the cancers and all that stuff. At least that's what they say now. I'm sure in 10 years they're gonna be like, well, actually, Zyn was really fucking bad for you.
Yeah.
But you know, hey, I can only work with the information I'm given at the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was a big smoker. I was like a pack and a half a day from the time I was like 13, and then I switched to the vaping. And then I've been trying to incorporate more of the Zyns, but I'm a lost cause when it comes to nicotine. I can't really exist in any way without significant nicotine intake at all times.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how I am too. I mean, I smoked for a lot of years, you know, and for everyone, like I wasn't one of the ones who like a pack a day or anything like that. I think I was actually much worse. I wouldn't wake up in the morning or anything like that. It was when I was drinking, and I drank every day and every night. So at like 4 o'clock, I started having my first drink. At 5 o'clock, I have my first cigarette. I go through a half a pack in a matter of a few hours before I go to sleep. So it's like chain smoking while I'm drinking. But luckily, I'm not drinking anymore, and I'm not smoking anymore. So those are two good things, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. I know you've been sober for a long time. Even the last time we talked, which was now a couple of years ago now, the last time you were on this show.
Yeah.
You'd been sober for a while. How long have you been sober for now?
I guess it's been 8 years. Yeah, 8 years.
So just as long as your marriage. Congratulations, by the way.
Well, so that was the last time that I drank was at our wedding. That was the last one because I hadn't drank like the year before, and then I thought at the bachelor party, which we didn't really have a bachelor party, it was just like a dinner. And I thought, you know, it's a celebration. I'm gonna do it. And within like an hour, I was blacked out and saying like, I gotta drink more shit, you know. So that was sort of the end of it. That was like the definitive end for me.
So it was the night before. It wasn't a performance issue on consummating the marriage or anything.
Like no, it was.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
It was one of those things where, you know, for me, drinking was a way to deal with my ADHD and these things that I've always dealt with. And I thought it was a good way of silencing like the anxiety and the voices and all that stuff and making me more socially, you know, interested or whatever. And a lot of it was just a pose. You know, I was so young when we started that I wanted to be like the rock star guy so bad. And, you know, to not be, because I was 19, right? So like everybody's older than me. Everybody's lived more of a life. And now I'm 19 and on the road and trying to be cool. And, I have a very addictive personality, and it just became an issue for me. But, you know, it was more about everything that surrounded it. And when I kind of decided that I didn't give a shit about being cool anymore, it was a lot easier to get rid of that.
I think that just comes with age, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, as you start to get old. I mean, I'm in a similar boat, or I was in a similar boat. Started touring at 18 years old. You said you started at 19. I mean, that's the same shit at the same time, you know? And we both had the same aspirations. We wanted to be in a big rock band. Like, let's be honest at that point, you know? And, you know, it was like that. You felt on the defensive all the time. Like you had to show that you could hang or earn your stripes with everybody around, I think it's always been something I had a kinship with you when I hear you in interviews or just talking to you as friends and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, like, you guys, you and your band Black Veil Brides have kind of always had that chip on your shoulder in that way, not in a bad way, but like that chip on your shoulder of like, yeah, it's us against everybody else, and we kind of had that early on as well. I'm glad we went right into that though, because I did want to ask. So the last time you and I talked, you casually brought up the infamous speech at the Revolver Awards.
Sure,
and
yeah.
I had forgotten about it. I remember I'd seen it, and then afterward I was like, oh shit, I do remember that. And I wanted to share with you the reason I had kind of forgotten about it is because for so long, us in the band, like when we're at rehearsal and stuff, and when we're just talking, it was here's the thing.
Here's the thing. Yeah, that's the line. Here's the thing.
And we fucking love it. I'm not casting shade on it at all. I fucking love that speech. Not for, calling people out or anything like that. But just, and I understand, we'll get to why that I think this all ties into what we're talking about here. But I just wanted to share with you that, yeah, I'd forgotten that was your speech because we had been quoting it for so long. And I was like, oh, shit, that was Andy's speech. Of course I know that speech, And we're always like, here's the thing. Because you catch yourself saying, here's the thing anyway. Then we start, and we go into a diatribe after that.
You got it, but you got to do the resler voice with it. Now, I did I saw a video of you guys where it was said on stage. And I thought that was... That was incredible.
It was an homage. Yeah, it was an homage to our friend.
I was so excited about it. I was like, that's the greatest use of that. Because, it's become a thing now where I guess like as a sound, it was played on TikTok a lot. And so we were somewhere and this guy walked up to me. He was like an EDM producer. And he was like, oh, I use the here's the thing sound all the time. So, that kind of stuff, I was glad it took on a life of its own. And when I saw that video, I laughed so hard. I thought it was awesome.
Dude, yeah. It's completely an homage to us. It's like, here's the thing. And we think it's so funny. Yeah, I mean, and on the serious side of it, there were some things said that, I'm sure you wish you could take back.
Of course.
You can only move on in life, so it doesn't really matter. But I think another thing, the reason why we love it so much is because we have a kinship. It's like, that's the kind of shit, like, we may have wanted to say at one
sure.
point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're kind of like, that's pretty good. And of course, the wrestling voice, of course,
The heel turn, as Jericho called it, the heel turn.
Yeah. Of course he did. Oh, Jericho, you beat me to it. So good every time. But yeah, I think it ties into this. I saw you guys have this little mini documentary now for this upcoming tour and the EP that you guys are about to leave for, the Bleeders EP. And you mentioned, early on you felt like that you guys were kind of on this defensive mode at all times. I feel like that's kind of, that was the time, right? When you guys had that speech, you were, constantly having to deflect and defend your guys' honor, I guess, for lack of a better term, right?
Well, I think one of the things that's been consistent for us, and, you and I talked about this the last time I was on your show, there is something about certain artists or certain bands that whether it's their music or their image or the fan base or whatever, there's a perception that's built early in the career, and then that is just something that you're saddled with. And for me and I talked about it when we toured with you guys, I had just turned 20. And my whole life was defending us and being angry and, yelling at people in the audience and whatever else. Like that was because, I had dealt with it for so long as a kid. And then now I'm in this band and I'm having like Kerrang! Magazine call us like the most hated band in the universe and all this stuff. And when you're that age, you just have so much like piss and vinegar that it became all encompassing for me. But it's not so much that has changed. The comment section of this video will prove that as well. There's plenty of people who, regardless of what I do or what the band does or whatever else, they'll maybe say something nice. They'll be like, oh, he's a funny, nice guy, but his band sucks. You know what I mean? Like those sort of things. We hear that all the time. So it's always been, but as I've gotten older, it amuses me more, and I try to take it to be something that, doesn't cause me so much anger, so much as that it's motivating in the sense that it has allowed us the opportunity to never get bored of what we do, to never have big egos about what we do, to never be in a position where we're the darlings of everybody. So everything we do is immediately going to be loved. So you don't have to try very hard. We've always had to scrape and work and push ourselves. And I look at that now as, through the lens of it being something that was beneficial for us, because we've never been complacent and we're still always fighting to make the best possible thing, not to prove the quote unquote haters wrong, but to
Yeah.
keep pushing ourselves forward to make stuff that can be things we can look back on and love and appreciate. And then also, entertain our fans. Because, the number one thing at the end of the day is you want to entertain your audience. That they've put you on the quote unquote pedestal of being someone that they pay money to see or spend money on your records or merchandise. Having an opportunity to go, hey, let me entertain you is a pretty cool gig.
Absolutely, and it's the biggest thing. Like, I mean, that's what we always wanted to do. Like from when we were kids, it was entertaining. We wanted to be, and you have to admit, and part of that is wanted to be center of the attention. Like
Sure.
that was that.
Sure.
We're attention whores. Like we really are. I mean, at a coreness, and understanding that too is great as your career goes on, as you mature in life in general. And I don't mean to sound like I'm the older wise man here. I'm not wise at all. I still
Sure.
feel like I'm that 12-year-old kid. But it's just funny because you see it, and you see, like, as the careers go on, and you kind of just like accept all of who you are at a certain point.
Sure.
And you even have that. We're talking more about the fight against the haters or whatever you were referring to there, and it wasn't like a revenge against them, as you said, but that's like your turmoil that you're fighting inwards. But
Yeah.
you're also fighting like those things yourself, like the fact that, like, oh, I just said, like, you have to admit that we're a bit of attention whores, or you don't get into entertainment. If
Yeah.
you wouldn't be in entertainment, whatever facet it is, if you didn't like attention. Let's just put it that way. Like, I just,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but you fight that the whole time, especially in the rock genre that we're in. It's like, no, I don't want the attention, and it's like,
Sure.
well, if you really break it down, you do, and then and it's not a bad thing. What I'm saying is, you find these inner turmoils, and you find what is actually your strengths that sometimes you might have thought were your weaknesses before.
Sure. I mean, and I want to commend you guys because I've been talking a lot recently about one of the troubles that I have in the current day and age is figuring out a way in which you can make music, art, and promote that art, and do all of the fun stuff that surrounds it with a release, and also not have it be centered around the most unoriginal, debasing, terrible TikTok videos that you can make to try to get engagement, and
Yeah.
to be able to find new and interesting ways to engage your audience is something that, frankly, you don't see a lot of, particularly in our genre. Everything is sort of, you have the older bands who tend to do nothing online, and then you have the younger bands who need to show you what they had for breakfast and need to lip sync to their own song to try. And I'm not criticizing either end of that spectrum, but
Right.
you see so little opportunity for bands to do like what you guys did, which is to really create an immersive experience with the release of a record and do something different. And I think that that's where you get that weird sort of pendulum swing of attention, right? Because people view the promotion of something as antithetical to art. And on the other side, there's people who only see the promotion of something as the art itself. So it's hard to find where you fit as a rock artist and make something that's curated and interesting and genuine to who you are, and also have it be something that's engaging for people online, which is where everybody lives. It's a very difficult balance to strike, and I think I see more often than not, and much to the frustration of many people that I've worked with over the years, and it's not their fault, but I have always kind of said no to the convention of, let me do the dumbest thing I can possibly do to try to get somebody to listen to this song, and maybe to my own
Yeah.
detriment. But again, that comes back to the attention that we want isn't the attention of existence. It's the
Right.
attention of, I've made this thing for you and I want to entertain you with it. And this is the way I'd like you to hear it or see it or be involved with it. And that is so much harder these days.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for putting us in that. It's definitely something that we think of, and try to be mindful of, and you understand I think it's actually fun too, as long as you're true to the main thing is being true to yourself. And you just said maybe it's a detriment to yourself, maybe it's a detriment to us that we didn't stay hip for a while there and everything or whatever. But who knows? The only thing you can't perceive what it might look like in the future, right? You got to act in the present. And for us, it's just always been be yourself. Like that's what's gonna that's what you're not gonna look back on and regret. You know, you may have had some missteps along the way, but you're not gonna look back if you were true to yourself and be like, oh, I really messed up. If you put yourself out in something that you're really not comfortable with, those are the times that if you look back, I mean, you guys have been doing it for a long time now too. I'm sure there's missteps along the way where you felt uncomfortable, you did it anyway, and now you're like, shit, I wish I didn't do that. You know what I mean? And I think that's a learning thing too. And to your point of these days, there is the spectrum, and I think it's not, to your point again, it's not about like right or wrong. It doesn't matter. Right or wrong is irrelevant in the conversation. There's so many, it's a vast way, and there's so many tools out there that can be used, and it's really the Wild West with labels not being what they once were, what they meant once before, what radio meant once before, what music videos meant when we were coming up. They don't mean the same thing anymore. It's not that they're irrelevant, but they don't mean the same thing anymore. So you find new ways to explore, be creative in your promotion. You can actually be creative in your promotion. I think that's your part. That like is infuriating sometimes and frustrating when you see other bands doing the same conveyor belt of promotion, and it's like, look guys, you can have fun with this too. You could actually be creative in this. You get to be creative in your music. You get to be creative in your art, your merch, whatever. This is a new way of being creative too, and I think it's fun, it's great, and everyone's just going to find their way on it.
I mean, I think the hardest thing is for young artists, like bands that are just starting. I don't know, I sometimes think about how hard it would be to try to enter into this world now, because the expectation of what you're meant to do beyond make a good song is so much more nuanced than it used to be in terms of what you're supposed to do right out of the gate. And one of the reasons why, like with this release with Bleeders, for us, we've been, we were on Universal for 100 years. We tried, we made a re-recording of our first record, and then we did, during the pandemic, we did a full-length record with an independent label. And we were in a situation where I didn't want to sign anywhere for a while. We were free agents, and I wanted to cultivate everything on our own and then figure out, is there a home for this, and is there a strategic creative partner that would not only understand it, but take what I have envisioned and what the band has made and turn that into something, as opposed to having a label with us the whole time. It was more, I mean, obviously it's an experiment, but it's also just having that creative freedom to build something and make something exactly how you'd want it to be done, and then present it to a label and go, do you want to get in on this? Which is what we did with this. We conceptually, the recording process, all of the funding for everything, merchandising, the printing of the vinyls, the CDs, all that stuff, the strategic partnerships with the American Red Cross, all of it was done on our own. And then we went to Universal and Spine Farm and said, do you guys like this? And if you do, let's get in business together. And I'm really excited about doing it that way, because I know that everything we're about to release is exactly what we wanted to do without any interference. And now the fact that I know that the label that we've gone to is one that not only appreciates that, but is invested in it, means that moving forward, they're going to allow us to create. And I think a lot of times with the young artists, they don't get that opportunity.
Yeah. No, I'm so... You're so right in what you just said there, and I have so many questions because we just entered free agency ourselves. Our contract with Warner came up, and it's an internal discussion that we've had. You know when it's coming, obviously. Yeah. How did you find? I mean, you just kind of described how you guys went with Bleeders to Spine Farm, and that sounds awesome. We've been fortunate in our career that we kind of have already done that with our labels in the past. We create the stuff, send it to them, and that they don't really mess with us creatively. But to have that now with the label, like have everything done in-house and then present it as like who's interested. What was that process like? Like, I mean, we use the word free agency. It's obviously a sports word, right? So it's like you're putting out your talent. This is what we're going to do with or without you. Who wants to be on board? How
Well,
was
and
well,
that's kind of what it was. I mean, similarly, all the years that we were with Republic, we were essentially, and this is nothing against them, we were like the artist that was on the label that maybe they didn't even know we were on the label. You know what I mean? Like we would get, they would fund things, so that was a great thing, and but we were allowed to do whatever we wanted, and then we just gave them a record. But I found that that wasn't a relationship that I liked in particular because without like say, and this is getting really in the weeds in terms of like talking about labels, but if you don't have a product manager that cares, you're not going to get very far with the release itself. So
right.
it was nice for us to be able to have autonomy, but it also you don't really get a lot of personalized attention once that thing is out. So the thought then was, okay, well, for the next kind of chapter, we were thinking we'll go to an independent label where we have personal relationships with everybody there, and then that proved to be a relationship that was great, but it didn't. Again, it didn't really service the way that I like to create things, and so it really came down to look, I'm I'm saying we're gonna do a like a Sweeney Todd themed metalcore EP, like, and so that's not if you're under contract with a company that's pumping a bunch of money into you, and you just say that, it's a lot harder to sell. So the thought was, let's make the whole thing and have it be this total package that then I start having meetings with different labels and explain to them what it is and see who isn't signing us off the back of the name that is a recognizable name in the rock world, and is rather wanting to get invested in this and come up with new ideas and add to it. And I would say that of everybody that we met with, Spine Farm was the home that felt like. And again, there's huge benefits for us of being back in the Universal system and having access to our entire catalog for years and years. So, but it was more about Jonas and Tim and Darren and the guys there that I felt as if they not only were cool with us doing it, but actually were interested in what would this fucking Sweeney Todd thing be, and invested in it, and in every way that they could be.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So I love that in so many ways. You present it, you do it yourself. We already covered that. Now, what is Spine Farm doing for you? Like you said that they're into it. They love the idea, obviously. Into the weeds, as you said, more on the brass tack side. What is it that you're finding they are able to do that maybe you couldn't do on your own?
Well, it's still early days, right? And it's more about
Mm-hmm.
what people are showing in terms of interest level. Like we haven't released anything there yet.
Right.
So every new relationship that you get in is always the greatest relationship you've ever had, right? Like that's the new thing. But I like to think that this many years into the business, I have a good feel for whether somebody is placating me and my silly comic book ideas, or whether they're truly invested in it, and it feels as if significantly so that it's the latter. And also, I mean, for lack of anything else, they've allowed for us to do things on a financial level that we haven't been able to do maybe ever in terms of what we're building out for this release. So yeah, I mean, again, it's early in a relationship, but for me, it became a really important thing for me in my career and in the band's career to make sure that any relationship that we go into strategically was one that I'm letting I'm interested in making comic book themed concept records and musical themed EPs, and I want action figures that are associated with these records, and like those are the things that interest me. If you're signing us because you think that I might be sellable, or you can use me as a sort of avatar rock star looking guy, and not the band Avatar, I mean to say this sort of like
Yeah.
faceless idea, then that's not the business that I want to be in. I want to make exactly what we want to make and do it in the way that we want to do it. And that, I understand, is also a position that is one of privilege, because our audience has allowed for me to go into a meeting and say that is only because we have had such an ardently supportive fan base and this sort of cult
Right.
following for years and years and years. If that doesn't exist, then I can't go tell people, hey, my name's Andy and I want to make Stephen Sondheim meets metal. Like, you know what I mean? Like they don't give a shit. But if you walk in and people are coming to the shows and buying the merchandise and supporting you, then you get the opportunity to do it.
Absolutely, and that goes to show real quick to the audiences of everything that we're talking about here, that we're going to be discussing here on the episode. You guys do give us that power everywhere, right? And it's that's what I've come to realize is when every artist, every band thanks their fans and everything. Without you guys, we wouldn't be here, and they don't. There's not enough time necessarily to go into what exactly that means. And for me, recently, it's meant that like you guys have given us the freedom to create over the years what we feel, what makes us happy, and what gets us going. And
Yeah.
that's where like the biggest appreciation comes from. So I just want to thank everybody from that and kind of be more direct on those almost baseless thank yous sometimes. Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and that's also hard in this day and age because if you're not careful, um, you can start to see your audience either as a totality of positivity and not connect at all, or if you get too connected, you can start to get in the weeds on like, oh, so many people that like my band talk shit about different records of ours or what we're wearing or what we do, and then you start
Yeah,
to feel
let
negative.
them
So,
dictate
yeah,
then
so
dictate the art that way sometimes too
exactly.
if
So
you
you
let it go
kind of
that way.
gotta be able to look at it as these are real human beings who
Mm-hmm.
have spent money and time and invested, you know, people, for us especially because our audience is all different ages, but there's people who are convincing their parents to bring them to the show, convincing the babysitter to come, go while they were going to the show, and similarly, you guys in the same situation, somebody's convincing their kid to come with them. So you've got this
Yeah.
huge range of people who are all individuals and they're making that choice. And if you get too in the weeds on the specificity of people's relationship with your art, that's a problem. But if you don't understand that every single person is an individual that has a relationship to your art, and that's what collectively allows for you to do something, then you sort of detach to the point where you don't feel any actual connection. And that's when you have people like, that old Vince Neil quote of like the crowd is a faceless mass of people or whatever. And you're like, well, maybe to you because you don't
Yeah.
have any engagement with them. You were just everybody was like, yeah, there's 10 bands right now, and you're one of them, and so everything you do will be applauded. Now there's 10 million bands that start every day, and if somebody's choosing to use their dollar on you, that's a huge fucking deal.
Absolutely, man. You nailed it right there. That's the whole thing. And the other part that you mentioned there was, the yes man syndrome. You get a lot of that over the years. You guys, as you said, and you feel like now you're at a place where it makes you can recognize it more easily. You know what I mean? Like people who just stroking the ego, stroking your nuts when you're walking around and being like, yeah, 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 we'll do whatever you want until the day actually comes, right? And sounds like you guys have a good relationship so far. I know, as you said early on with Spine Farm, but you guys are doing some cool shit already right off the bat. I mean, this EP with Bleeders, the Sweeney Todd, the comic book idea that you're talking about, the characters, everything like that, of being able to expand where you guys want to take your creativity, I think is awesome. And you're showing it already. You mentioned the blood drive that you guys are doing with the Red Cross around it.
Yeah.
Sweeney Todd. So, real quick, on the Sweeney Todd thing, my only knowledge of Sweeney Todd is the Tim Burton Johnny Depp movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest. But when I was doing research about your influence of it, getting the record, being scared of the character
Yeah.
at a young age, and understanding like it was a record of the play and everything like that, it went deeper. Because when I first heard it, I was like, oh man, the Sweeney Todd thing, like. If you're going to a new label, maybe swing a little further, go for a little bit
Sure.
more of a home run. But now hearing you talk about it, I understand it a little bit more. I think that's awesome. And so maybe go into it a little bit more, like what that play meant for you, for those who maybe don't know yet.
Well, the reality is, there were a couple touchstone things for me as a kid that kind of shaped me. And I would say that the three prongs of that, maybe four, because I'll go for music, like rock music, it was Kiss and the Misfits.
Mm-hmm.
So they can kind of be one and the same in different ways because one represents the more musical side of what I was interested in, but they also had the theatricality, and then Kiss was the show more than anything else. Um, and then there was comic books, Batman, Spawn, Punisher, all these sort of dark, scary characters. And then in musical theater, there was Phantom of the Opera and Sweeney Todd. And as a kid, I gravitated so heavily around those things. And I I don't know what it was about Sweeney Todd in particular, but it was one of the first things that I remember of being a little kid, and not only feeling that I was scared by it, but that I was excited by it. Like, it's something about it made me want to look at the pictures in the CD booklet, and even though it almost scared me a little bit, it was the idea of it was so exciting, you know. And then there was tonally, the songs are so strange, and you know, you've got very evil sounding orchestration in there, and it was unlike anything else that I knew about. And it was this 1979 cast recording of Len Carew, who I knew as a kid because he was the narrator on the year that Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa did the home run race, like that year, the race to 63 or whatever. I had a VHS of every single home run that I would watch all the time. And Len Carew, who was Sweeney Todd in the original production, did the narration on that. So it was like, in some ways, it was like, oh, this guy can't be murdering people if Major League Baseball is letting him, you know, announce. So, you know, little kid.
Well, I mean,
logic,
sports and murders. I mean, I don't know if we want to go too deep.
Sure,
into
yeah.
it.
No, well, look, I was like 7, so you know. There have been, unfortunately, other examples in subsequent years.
I mean, we're right off the heels of someone passing that.
Yeah. I didn't. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I did not think that we would talk about OJ today, but here we are. Somehow we got there.
He comes up, man. Ever since '94, you know, he comes up in every conversation now. Ever since the trial, you know.
Sure. Yeah. I think this might be the first time I've ever talked to about him in an interview of any kind. So.
Oh well, I wasn't going to go deeper, but now let's go. I will say, out of everything that I saw, you know, everyone, you know, on both sides, like, yes, the sportsman that was OJ Simpson, all the accolades that he had on the football field, the acting career. I loved him in the Naked Gun series. I'll admit it. But it all gets tarnished when you go into the trial and the double murder.
Well, you know, I have found that killing a bunch of people will really ruin a lot of what you are.
You know, it's definitely not something you want written on your tombstone at the end of the day. Right?
And this is a small thing, but this is the last thing we'll say about OJ. The final years of OJ's life, his Twitter presence, where he was, he would make these videos about the games every week. I'm a big football guy, so these would end up in my feed, where it would be like OJ just talking unabashedly about like what he thinks the Bills are going to do today or whatever, and the tone of someone that you know that he knows that you know that he killed some people, but he's going to talk about the Bills today. It was one of the strangest things I've ever seen.
It's so strange. Man, I love that you brought that up, the Twitter thing. I didn't know. Now I want to go back to his Twitter. But
he starts every video with "Hello World," and then he says it's OJ. So that's that was his call sign. Hello World. In case
you didn't know, in case you didn't recognize my face over the last 30 years, I will say the one thing I think everyone missed. They're putting all of his accolades, everything that he's done good. But they forget to mention, like, #1 bestseller. Didn't he write a book about If I Did It?
If I Did It. Which is something that somehow.
Why do they omit that? Why do they omit that from his accolades? I don't get it.
I believe that Nicole Brown's family was paid the royalties of that book.
Well, then all the more reason to bring it up. I'll be the first to admit, or to bring it up in his accolades. Great football player, actor, double homicide. And
more likely than not, double homicider.
More likely than not. Yeah, that's the way to say it.
Yes. So I was not inspired by OJ's murders as a kid, but I was inspired by Len Carew's pretend murders.
Who was voicing? Yes, of course.
And so it was just this big element to my life. And as I got older, you know, I remember when they made the Johnny Depp movie. I was one of those, like, gatekeeper, as the kids say, where, like, when the movie came out, I was pissed that they made this movie because now, like, everybody's going to know about my little thing that I love. And then I was pleasantly surprised that I really enjoyed the movie. So,
okay.
It's not, it's interesting because it's one of those things where people don't really have a lot of understanding of what the story is. It's a Penny Dreadful story from the 1800s. And historically, there's a lot of precedent where people sort of confound the ideas of Jack the Ripper and Sweeney Todd, and in some instances, there were writers in the 1800s that alluded to the idea that they were one and the same person. And, you know, it's more of this sort of boogeyman scary story. But over the years, that story was turned into this story of revenge. And I had felt for so long this sort of burning, nagging feeling of, on one end, as we talked about, the sort of, you know, frustration with perceptions of the band when I was younger, especially. But on the other, as I got older, it was, you know, there's people that come and go in your life, and sometimes they are objectively a net negative for your life, right? And then once you kind of come around to that and you remove yourself from friendship with these people or whatever else, sometimes it can be really frustrating to think of that person and be like, what the fuck? How is that person allowed to just be like a big piece of shit all the time and like just continue to do it, right? So then you start to have all these angers and frustrations, and I kind of got to the point where I no longer, it was like this, it sort of happened within the last year where I sort of let go of a lot of those feelings of aggressive, like, fuck this person sort of mentality, and resign myself to the idea that it's okay to like have some people that you really don't like, but you don't have to think about the injustices of that. You can just have negative relationships and go, okay, well, I can acknowledge that that's a person that I shouldn't be around or whatever else. And then inversely, to see on your own side that you probably represent a piece of shit to somebody else. There's someone out there who's like, fuck that guy, you know, that you don't even know that you've wronged them in some way. Especially for me, spending so many years just blackout drunk, I'm sure I did and said things that were objectively abhorrent. So this idea that revenge is sort of this unattainable thing, and yet it still motivates so much of my writing. And this story, and Sweeney Todd is called the Revengical, because it's a musical about revenge, right? So I thought this was a cool way to sort of take inspiration from something culturally in my life while I'm thinking about and writing about these ideas of what is the distinction of humanity, what is the gray area, what is the things that tie us, and is it okay to also feel distrust or dislike of your fellow man by also thinking, well, I'm probably as fucked up as they are in some way.
Yeah. No, I'm it's really great that you come to that conclusion too. I come to a similar conclusion, not through the revenge thing and specifically through Sweeney Todd. But yeah, you get to a point where you realize we're all like here at the same time, the same place in this small little fucking pebble of a speck in the grander universe. We all come in like into existence with no prior knowledge, and then we're gone. And how much can you really know along the way? And you're gonna fuck up. You're gonna do it. So just enjoy the time that you're here and try to fuck up less along the way, I guess. But you know, it's like we're you can't get mad. You can't get like super mad about stuff like this way because it's not helping anything. It's just causing more. Everyone's just trying to figure it out. No one knows anything. No matter how confident they feel like they make you feel, and it makes you think, oh, this person really knows their shit. They deep down know they don't know shit because we.
But see, that's the issue that we have culturally in general right now is that everyone is so certain of their feelings about things, and everyone knows intrinsically that they're on the right side of something, right? And so I always say recently it feels like in America in particular, it's a country where everyone has done a bunch of rails of cocaine because cocaine is the drug of waiting for someone to finish talking so that you can assert the story that you want to tell, right? You're like, stop talking. I got some shit to say. That's every political or social conversation that exists now. It's nobody, not nobody, but by and large, the primary way that we function, especially on the internet, is I am exactly right. And there is no gray area, and there is no room for conversation. And inversely, the other people are evil and terrible. And the interesting thing about that is we all have to exist in a world wherein we work with and are around people that we don't necessarily know all of their intrinsic beliefs. But you can self-justify your surrounding circle that you have of friend groups or whatever else by creating this echo chamber of sameness and then act as if you don't ever interact with people that disagree with you. So when you
Yeah.
see things like, if such and such person associates with somebody who maybe doesn't agree with a certain contingent of a belief system or something, then that person then becomes directly associated with that belief set, even if they've never said anything to agree with it. And
Yeah.
and yet in life, let's say that you work at Staples. Everybody at Staples isn't going to have the same opinions as you, but it doesn't mean that you can't work there. It just means that you don't necessarily discuss those things if you can't have a conversation about it. So we exist
Right.
in this time where everyone is so certain of their rightness, and the inevitable sidesteps and backsliding and excuses that are made for things that run counter to that ideology are almost part and parcel with having an ideology itself. I live in Florida, and the number of people who I know who will say things to me about Florida, having never been there or have
Oh yeah.
zero perspective on it, um, it will always make me laugh because my life is spent where I live close to my in-laws. My parents come down all the time. We live in a nice, quiet neighborhood, and I get to hang out with my wife and our cats. That's what my life is. My life is not some sort of like on the streets political social fight. You know what I mean?
Which
Like,
no one's is. No one,
yeah,
no one except for the people online talking about it, and all they're doing is talking about it. Like to your point that you just had there, they've never been there. No one is. It's an old adage that no one's doing anymore. Maybe it's just because it's too old, but like, try walking in someone else's shoes a little bit. Like, and that's not to say like, oh, if you should try and put yourself. You just have to understand that there's different perspectives in life. There's different like because you grew up this way in this place, and you feel that way doesn't make the other person who grew up in this other place in a different way feels like they're right. It doesn't. It's a perception. It's a perspective that you develop over time being here, and if you're not open minded to the gray area and you just fucking sit in your ways, you're never going to understand other people's perspectives and understand that back to what I was saying with the Wild West of releasing music. There's no right and wrong. Like, what does
right.
right and wrong even fucking mean? Like, we don't know. Like, just try to understand and be curious and be open minded to other people's point of view.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think you know we're kind of at this bubble burst moment socially where um, I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt, and I don't think I always believe this, but I truly believe that inherently people are good and want good things. And I think that we exist now in a world where we are all told constantly that a different subset of belief or ideology makes a certain type of person bad. And so you lean into
Right.
that more. Now, the interesting thing that I find is I'm also not fence sitting because personally, there are things that I am passionate about, and there are things that I believe are objectively fucking terrible. And I will say that. But to be able to have the exact right perspective on everything is essentially impossible. And it makes
Yes.
it so um, all of us exist in this sort of afraid to exist with one another mentality, which is what I think is so beautiful about what you and I do and all the people in our sort of field. We play a rock show and people come to it and enjoy it and have some time off from the drudgery and the bullshit of all of life. And
Yes.
I find that to be so sacred that I want to protect that at all costs. I want it to be a safe, fun, exciting environment for people, all people, so that there is at least one thing that you can do with your weeknight or weekend night when the band that you love is in town that is not going to be about uh, feeling like you are constantly fighting against a world that needs you to know everything.
Dude, true words haven't been spoken. You just nailed it right there for me. That's everything. Entertainment is there in its sacred form for that. The release of it. It's so good. I'm so glad that we share the same ideology, at least on that for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
But let's go back to this Bleeders EP before we have to wrap it up here. Because and we spoke about the Sweeney Todd the movie there. I know you're a big Tim Burton fan, right?
Yeah.
You're a big Batman fan. Johnny Depp is in that movie. You already said that you were pleasantly surprised on the Sweeney Todd release. Are you excited for this Beetlejuice movie that Tim Burton's got coming out?
Well, Michael Keaton is like my
He
if
is
you
Batman.
yeah, if there was an actor that you've never met whose sports, particularly football allegiances, are antithetical to everything you believe, but they're still your hero, that would be Michael Keaton to me. Because I have to say, he's from Pittsburgh and he's a big Steelers fan, but every other part of Michael Keaton makes him one of my favorite people in the whole world. He's my Batman. He's when I was a little boy, he was the coolest person in the whole world because he was Batman, and I've always kept up with his career. And last summer, when he came back as Batman and was in the Flash, it was like a religious experience for me.
Nice.
We went opening night. I called it Keaton Day in my house. My wife was subjected to all Keaton related things. We had to watch all Batman Keaton things. I had a shirt that just said Michael Keaton on it that I wore to the theater the opening night. Like he's
Nice.
my dude. So I will be opening night at Beetlejuice for sure.
Yeah, man. It's one of those things. Again, as a gatekeeper of the original Beetlejuice and being such a big fan, I'm like, man, I just really hope it's not some of these movies that they're doing sequels to, a couple decades later, have really missed the mark.
Sure.
One of the greatest comedies of all time, in my opinion, is Dumb and Dumber, and the second one just fully missed the mark. In my
Yeah,
opinion,
yeah, it wasn't, but I did like the cat that they named Butthole. I still use that.
Do you have a cat named Butthole? Is that
No, but we call our boy cat Butthole all the time because of
Okay.
that movie. So
Okay. Well, there's things to take away from it, but I'm just in the sense of like, you have that nostalgia, and you're like, do you really need a sequel to it? I'm glad that of course they did it smartly. Keaton's back, Winona Ryder's back.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting the lady, the mom's name, the actress.
Catherine O'Hara.
Catherine O'Hara,
yeah.
yes.
And then Jenny Ortega, who was in Wednesday, which was really good as well.
Yes,
So yeah,
absolutely. So they got a good cast, so it should be good. I'm excited for it. I'm glad you're excited for it too. Wanted to touch base on that. When is that? That movie's coming out like pretty soon now, right? Is it this summer?
I have absolutely no idea when anything happens unless it's a Batman-related property. So I just saw last night that there's a new
Batman
plan.
movie?
They pushed it to next year. They're delayed, so the Pattinson Batman is pushed to October of next year. But
Okay.
the Joker Part 2 is coming out around Halloween this year, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. That's gonna be awesome, man. So on the Sweeney Todd stuff we already talked about, you did mention Keaton being a Pittsburgh fan. I know you are a Cincinnati Bengals fan, and last season didn't pan out too well
Sure.
for you guys. Had some injuries, of course. I had the pleasure of meeting the long snapper for your team not too long ago in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Cal, I have it written down here so I don't fuck it up. So I
Clark
just call him
Harris
Cal.
or Cal Adonis or there's
Yes,
like,
Cal.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was a very, very nice guy. Very nice to meet there. But I had a beef this morning. I watch. I'm a big sports fan. I watch First Take every morning. I don't know about you. That's
Sure.
my ESPN show.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it. I'm going, what the fuck? They got the NFL draft coming up. It's a countdown, 57 hours, 58 minutes, and like seconds. I'm like, and it's taking up, like the big ticker going all the way across it. I have a beef with that. I'm like, okay, I get it when you're coming down to maybe 24 hours. You're
at most 48. We can't be doing 58.
Dude, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it did bring me to today though. Like you had some injuries and some things happen in the off season so far. Are you looking forward to the draft for your boys?
It's interesting because we still ended up with a winning record last year, and I was very pleased with that. Yeah. We would have made the playoffs in just about any other division, but you had 3 teams that made the playoffs in our division last year. And so if Burrow can stay healthy, I think anything's possible. And that's a different feeling than I've ever had in my whole life. So, I was talking to somebody the other day about it, and the night that we were in the Super Bowl and playing the Rams in LA, when it was clear that we were going to lose at the end of the fourth quarter, I remember getting all these text messages from friends saying like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, man." And it's impossible to explain, but the real reality is if the stadium had exploded and the game never happened, the fact that I got to see the Bengals players in Bengals uniforms on the field and it said Super Bowl on the field was the coolest thing in the world for me. Like
Yeah.
that's a dream of, at the time it I was 30, 31 at the time. Like that was, every one of those years was a dream, like, so,
Yeah.
all of this to me is just exciting. The fact that we have a team that can compete. We lost some people in the offseason this year, lost some people in the offseason last year. We made a few good signings, brought Von Bell back. We lost Mixon. Interested to see what Zach Moss does in his place. We got, hopefully, I mean, it's always hard with the draft when you're a team that's drafting in the 20s, you don't know what's going to be
Right.
available. So, hoping to see either, I would like an edge rusher or somebody who can come in and solidify the left side of the line a little bit more. But we'll see. I trust. It's so weird to say this. I trust the personnel and Duke Tobin and the Bengals to make a good decision, which is not anything that I ever had my whole life. So, I'm excited about it.
Dude, I love your knowledge on the sport too. You just went in there real quick, and off of what you just said, I have so many more questions, but I know we got to get back to the music here. But I got to say, man, before we get back to the music, you got to come back on during the football season. We'll do a whole episode just on football and what's
Yeah,
going on.
and I'll. The other thing is, every time I'm ever on this show, I'm sitting in a hotel room. So I want to come on when I can. I'll be at home. I'll be at home most of this football season, so we can. I can not be on my iPad in a hotel room like crouched against the wall.
It works out fine either way, or maybe just when we're in passing over the next couple of years, because I know you guys are going to be doing some tours here. You got Sick No World was the times were just announced to it. That's coming up this weekend
Yep.
actually. While we're recording, this will come out. It will have already passed. But that takes me to Vegas. That Sick No World's happening in Vegas. You're out. System of a Down headlining again. It's an amazing festival.
Yeah.
And it's happening in Vegas, as I said. And you guys did a cover on this EP of Sunday Bloody Sunday by
Mm-hmm.
U2, who was in Vegas did the first
The Sphere, yeah.
Sphere. Did you get a chance to go out and see any of that?
No, but I wanted to. It's interesting. My path to becoming a U2 fan was kind of unconventional in the sense that I was, obviously everybody knows who U2 is, but
Right.
my aunt is like a big super fan of U2, and I went with her and my mom to when they did the Rattle and Hum, like they did a special wing of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame celebrating an anniversary of the Rattle and Hum movie that U2 did. And I really fell in love with particularly that era of the band and just went down this whole rabbit hole with them. And so when it came time to figure out, what kind of songs are we going to do for this, we ran through a million different songs. And I know it sounds funny in retrospect because the song is called Sunday Bloody Sunday and we're putting out a blood-themed EP. But it
Right.
actually was not intentional because at the time that
Okay.
we actually tracked that first before Bleeders was fully written and before we did the My Friends cover. So it was not intentional. It was just sort of a happy accident.
That is a funny happy accident for sure.
Yeah.
With this release, you guys are involved with the Red Cross,
Mm.
a blood donation. I think that's a really great thing. Maybe speak to that, and also, I just found this out like 2 days ago, and I don't know if you've heard about this, Andy, but like apparently nurses love dudes, like female nurses love dudes that have veins showing,
Oh,
and
okay.
apparently it's this thing. Have you heard about this before?
Uh, well, I mean, I would imagine that if you were doing, what's it called? Phlebotomy or whatever. Well, I don't know what the word is, but if you are very vascular, it's certainly helpful.
Right.
Famously, any of my fans know the story of when I broke all my ribs. I was back when we used to wear the full body paint, and they were trying at the hospital to find a vein to give me some painkillers, and they couldn't because of all the black paint. So they were just stabbing all different parts of my arm. So that I could have benefited from being more vascular in that time.
I just found it very interesting. I was just like, well, are they just all vampires? Like, why would I understand? Like, it would be easy for the profession, but why is that tied into attractiveness
Maybe
at
it's
that way?
just one of those like, sort of like what do you call it? Like just proximity to something long enough, you start to be attracted to it. If you're spending all your days looking at veins, then you're like, hey, that's a good looking set of veins you got there.
I guess that's the case though. But real quick, tell me a little bit about your Black Veil Bride's relationship with the Red Cross. You said you guys had this even before you presented the EP to Spine Farm. So how did that relationship come up, and what does it mean to you?
Well, I want to give credit because while I certainly was involved in the process and the idea, this was initially something that former guest on your show, Blasco, who was our manager, he grew up in LA and went to a show at the Whiskey in like 1985 that Wasp was doing, where the American Red Cross did a blood drive at the show. That tells you sort of how long ago this was, where they were just outside with needles, giving blood.
And it was okay.
Yeah, but so it stuck in his head all these years, and we were talking about, I would love to do something related to something altruistic with this, and he was like, I've got it, and presented that, and we thought, let's take it even a step further and make it something where people can do it all over the place and bring it on the whole tour, and put together merchandise. This little pin that I'm wearing here is it says I'm a bleeder, and this is what you get among many other merch items when you give blood as part of this. And we just want, look, this music video is coming out as of us recording this in a number of a little bit less than 58 hours.
Oh, a little less, a little less than the draft. So everyone's seen it by this time.
Yeah. So and in that video, I am brutally murdering a lot of people, and I thought, well, if you're gonna put it out there where you're killing a bunch of people, you should also have something that gives back, which is once again takes us to Nicole Brown Simpson's family getting the royalties off of the If I Did It book. And now we have done.
It all comes full circle. I love it. And there's one thing I have to ask your advice on, but I have to admit, dude, having this conversation with you today, I've noticed that you're a very well spoken gentleman, and I appreciate that as a host of a show that's about talking here. So I really appreciate it. I know you've had your own podcast for a while, the Andy Show. I checked that out a little bit, and but the last video on YouTube was like a year ago. So are you just on Patreon only with that show now? Or are you just not doing it that often, or?
Yeah, no, we do it every week. It's only on Patreon. We moved it from being a show with guests and games and stuff to just more of a hour-long rant that I have with my cousin about things that are mistakes that I've made that week, or dumb situations I've gotten into, or neurodivergent complaints that I have about existing as me. So that's what it is. But it's andyshow.tv, and you can sign up. I think it's $2 a month. And we put out an episode every week of hour plus. Right now, the current thing that we're working on is there was a laser tag place in my hometown that's pirate themed that I've never been to, but I'm obsessed with the idea of a pirate themed laser tag place. So I decided to use my platform for good. They had almost all negative reviews on Yelp and every place else. So I decided over the last 2 years to transform their Yelp and Google reviews into one of the most sterling. I've never been inside this building before. And if you go to Scallywag Tags reviews on Google, you will see people saying, I'm from Manchester, England. I've never been here, but thanks to the Andy Show, it's my dream to go to this place. And so we've been working on that for it. And finally, the owner has contacted us after all these years, saying basically, what the fuck is going on? People come into this place all the time saying that they're here from the Andy Show. And so we're going to do our first ever live show podcast probably this summer from Scallywag Tag in Cincinnati. So if anybody's in the area, come on down and play some laser tag with us.
Dude, I'm going to go write a review of my dream to go there because I spoke to you, for sure. That's brilliant, by the way. Everyone go check out this show. The last thing I have to ask, though, because I didn't realize this last time we were talking, I don't think, or if I did, I'd forgotten it, so I apologize. But you grew up as an only child, an only son. Mm-hmm. I have a 7-year-old that's going to be an only son. And, only child. What advice do you have for me raising an only child? What do I need to watch out for? What do I need to nurture along the way?
The coolest thing for me was just that I was friends with my parents. And it made it so I didn't have to worry or be sad about not having people to socialize with or other kids. The weird thing now as an adult is I have no shared memories of my parents with anyone else. You know what I mean? Like I'm the keeper of all of the funny family things that happen because remember when dad did that dumb thing isn't something you can talk to your dad about, but it's something you could talk to your sibling or whatever else. So that's the only strange thing. But in every other way, I would say it was 100% a net positive for me. The fact that I had all of their attention, I would not have been able to. We weren't a rich family, and yet I played hockey, which is the most wealthy sport in the
So
world.
expensive.
But my dad could, and look again. I wish that I could go back and tell little Andy, like, can you not pick the most expensive sport to obsess over? But he hustled and busted his ass, and my parents allowed for me to do that. If I had a sibling, that wouldn't have been an option. Just like all of the fucking copious amounts of attention that I required wouldn't have been an option if I had another sibling. So,
well, you would have had to seek it elsewhere, and I
yeah,
guess, but with the friendship of the parents, could you say, you remember, like, could I go to my son and remember that stupid thing your mom did, and I could be
yeah,
that for him?
absolutely, and we do that all the time, and that's
Perfect.
I would say there is nothing that has been more formative for me or important than my parents treated me like. They were parents and they were guidelines and they taught me things and it wasn't like it was a free for all, but they never treated me like I was a dumb little kid and they involved me in everything. We watched TV together every night and, if I was interested in something, they didn't make it seem like it was stupid. They encouraged my interests and never spoke to me with kid gloves on. I was told the real truth about stuff and spoken to like, ostensibly an adult from the time I was little. And I'm the person I am because of that.
That's awesome to hear. That's what I'm going to keep on doing. I think that's good advice for any parents out there of any children, to make sure that they don't make their kids feel stupid for the shit that they're into. Just
Yeah.
Just be a beacon of light in it, for sure. And man, great conversation. Could have gone on for so much longer. Got to have you back on to talk more about the Andy Show podcast. I want to get into that, and sports.
Yeah.
So
And football season, we're doing it.
Man,
We're doing
it. We're doing it upright. Again, thank you so much for the time. Everyone go check out the Breeders EP. The Breeders Tour's on right now, and so much more from Black Belt Brides and Andy. Thank you again. Thanks to everyone at home for watching, subscribing, all that fun stuff. Until next time, as always, cheers.